What's up, everyone, and welcome to Early Edge Prime Time. We have a great game in store for you today, and I know you're sweating the end of the Kansas City Chiefs Buffalo Bills game, but we appreciate you doing that and being in here with us. Like I said, it's Cowboys, it's Eagles, all the odds powered by BetMGM as always, and it's time to bring in the stars of the show. We have a full house of guests, of stars, of analysts. Proppy, Danny Brasco. Let me see some shadow boxing. We got to see. So there it is. Mike McClure is here with a surprise. And of course, Kenzie is back. Smashed the first touchdown score on her first show just a couple weeks back. She's going to go for a second gem tonight. Hope everybody is doing well. I want to get right into it. And by the way, if the chat wants to update us on the game, that's great. But we want to talk Cowboys, Eagles. Before we get into our official picks, and Proppy, I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about the side here. I just kind of want to go around and see if anybody has a lean or what their lean would be. It's not necessarily an official play on the side here. It's Eagles plus 3.5 or Cowboys minus 3.5. Proppy, I started with you because you're an Eagles fan. I want to see if there's some objectivity coming out of your mouth here.
There is never objectivity when we're talking about the Eagles, Sia. But no, and all kidding aside, I do like the spot for the Eagles, especially getting 3.5 points. If this were 3 or 2.5, I'm likely staying away or backing the Cowboys. But I think at 3.5, I got to take the Eagles here. I think this is just a bounce back spot for them against Dallas. Things were just everything lined up last week for the 49ers, in my opinion. The Eagles were just out of gas, coming off those two very emotional victories, depleted with injuries. Now they look a lot healthier, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Fletcher Cox back in the fold. Zach Cunningham, the linebacker, who's been fairly solid for the Eagles, and then adding all-pro linebacker Shaq Leonard to the mix. I just think this Eagles team is going to be up for this game. They know the importance of it. I think it's really hard to beat this Eagles team twice in a row, especially giving 3.5 points. So I'm going to back the Birds here.
Yeah, also hard to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. And Mike, I go to you because I saw you do something demonstrative with your hands like, hey, that's a catch. And then I looked at the chat. They said, what a great throw by Mahomes. So I know you've got some of your focus on that, but what's your focus on the side here? Oh, is it a touchdown, Mike?
Well, there's a flag, of course, but Travis Kelce did throw the ball backwards to Kadarius Toney during the middle of the play. So we shall see what the flag is. Yeah, have fun watching the official scorers figure that one out for a few weeks, but it's a flag on the Chiefs.
So what's your
Kadarius Toney lined up offsides?
Speaking of Chief, too, who just made an appearance.
Yes.
What's your lead on this game, Mike McClure? Eagles plus 3.5, or are you taking the favorite here?
With the hook, I will take the 3.5. It is brutal doing shows with the Kansas City Chiefs playing in a dog named Chief. He thinks he's being called every 14 seconds on the screen. However, I do lean to the Eagles 3.5 here. When you look at this spot for the Eagles, one thing I want to see from them that we don't get to see very often is this team playing in a controlled environment, not dealing with elements of any kind at all. That's what you get when you play at Dallas. So while Dallas has run extremely hot at home, I think that they're going to have some success on both sides, but I do not think you should be getting the hook here. I set the number at 2 for Dallas, which implies the Eagles are slightly better or about the same on a neutral field. So I'm going to go Eagles plus 3.5 is the lean here.
Yeah, and Kenzie, that hook does seem pretty important with what we think is going to be a tightly contested match here. Shout out to Buckets. Where's your lean here? Is it Eagles plus 3.5 or Dallas minus 3.5?
Yeah, and I hate to go with the homer pick too, but it is that plus 3.5. As Proppy mentioned, getting that 3.5 instead of the 3 is huge. So I think I have to take that there. Look, we are yet to see the Cowboys beat up on an actual good football team. They're awesome at beating subpar teams, which is so cool. However, this will not be the same situation here. We haven't seen Jalen Hurts have to come back from such an astronomical loss in over 50 starts. So I'm really interested to see how he performs here. But again, that 3.5, that's my favorite number here with this. So I like the Eagles.
Yeah, Danny Brasco, there is some merit to Dallas just beating up on, lesser teams here. With that said, I do want to point out that they're on extra rest, and you're not afraid to be contrarian with the group. Are you actually on Dallas minus 3.5 here?
I like it. See, I like it even more now that all my colleagues are against me. It's sort of like when you see the dais line up on that morning show and everyone picks that same logo, to go to the other side, right? Well, not to discredit all the points they made because they're fair, but I feel like that hook is bait for sharp bettors, for the public. I mean, we know how public and popular Philadelphia sports betting market is. They go to the window for their team. So Eagles as dogs are going to attract a lot of money on the handle. And I'm thinking to myself, a team that's 10-2, 8-3-1 against the spread this late in the year. I mean, is that really, are they just giving that gift away? And in fact, Jalen Hurts as an underdog has struggled 4-9 straight up and 6-7 against the spread. So I'm going to get a little more into that on my official pick on side. That hook is a key factor, but I'm leaning towards the side of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right. And I certainly don't mind that pick. I understand the logic behind it. I'm going to probably go with the crew here, Danny Brasco. I'm going to take the Eagles plus 3.5. And it's mostly for what Mike McClure said. When I'm getting the hook there, now don't get me wrong, I feel like they're baiting me into that hook a little bit. And I do want to acknowledge, the Dallas Cowboys truly on extra rest playing last Thursday. Remember that exciting game against the Seattle Seahawks where they won 41-35. But with all of that said, I do think 3.5 is a little bit too much. I do think the interior can push the Dallas Cowboys around just enough to maybe keep this game closer than the spread indicates. Let's just talk totals, leans on totals real quick. We'll probably spend a little less time on this because I do want to get to our official picks. But Mike McClure, I'm going to come right back to you. What's your play on the total here? It's not an official play, but what's the lean here?
Yeah, the lean's also going to be to the over here. Very rare for me to look over in a lot of these spots. However, I cannot understate how important it is for the Eagles to be playing in a controlled environment. I think it's going to be significant for them. I think it helps some of the edges they have with the big playability with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, having Dallas Goedert back, a little bit of distraction. I think it's going to help free Devontae Smith a little bit individually in this game. But when I look at the total, I think Dallas is going to continue to roll at home, and that's going to put the Eagles in a neutral or trailing game script most of the way. We've seen this in a few of their games, most notably the San Francisco game. The second half of these games absolutely shoot out when this team has to play a little faster. They get a little relaxed coverage. When you find teams willing to surrender 6 to 8 yards at a time, that is where I think the Eagles are actually an incredibly good team overall. So I think that they can push back and forth. I would lean over here.
Can we take a second here? Proppy, I'm coming to you next on your lean here, but look at Mike's background. I mean, it's just operating on all cylinders. He's got the right helmets out there. The books are perfectly positioned. I'm very happy about my background, but I'm very jealous of Mike McClure's. Proppy, do you have a lean on the total here, over or under?
I initially actually liked the under, but after listening to my colleague and Mike give his take, I actually am going to go with the slightest of leans to the over here. I just think both these offenses, they're firing on all cylinders. The defenses both got off to a really good start and have cratered a bit in recent weeks. I just have been really impressed with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys passing attack. Just look absolutely phenomenal over the past 6 to 7 weeks here. Obviously, both teams capable of pushing each other. I think getting Dallas Goedert back is a huge addition for this Eagles offense to take a tremendous amount of pressure off of Devontae Smith, allowing him to run a lot more routes down the field. They're utilizing Goedert a lot in the short area passing game and the screen game as well. The Eagles throw more screen passes than any team in football. So I would have a lean here towards the over, but it's of the slightest variety.
Kenzie, same question, over or under?
Yeah, I lean the over too, and I like regression to the mean as much as the next guy, but I don't think this is the spot for that with these Dallas Eagles matchup. Look, as great as the Cowboys defense can be, they allowed 300 yards to Sam Howell and then over 300 yards to Geno Smith in the past 2 weeks. So there's some kind of regression going on there. I think it's a good opportunity for these wide receivers. Again, the Cowboys don't always play their best against talented teams like this. So I think the Eagles should have a great time, again, with Dallas Goedert back. That really makes it a lot of moving parts for this defense to deal with. And again, like Proppy was saying, Dak's looking great. They're looking just as good. I'll be the first to admit that the Eagles pass D has certainly looked better. So I do think we see a lot in the air tonight.
All right. And by the way, the odds at BetMGM, 52.5 here. It's 53 in some places, but 52.5 generally seems to be the number that it's on. Certainly that's what it's on at BetMGM. Danny, over or under?
Looks like I'll be the contrarian once again. 52.5. Look, the line's moving against me, so my colleagues could very well be right. But I'm going to continue to play primetime unders. In fact, the last 3 have lost. They were a shocking 29-9 to the under. Now they're 29-12. Doesn't mean I'm going to not continue to play them. And at this number of above 50, totals that have closed above 50 in the NFL this season, only 10 of them, they're 8-2 to the under. And going back to last season, 26-12 to the under. So really high total primetime game. Look, matchup wise, yeah, we've seen that Philadelphia secondary get exposed. Dallas is rolling. And I certainly, like Mike McClure said, could certainly see the Eagles getting fast in this dome environment. So there are some liabilities for this going over, but I'm playing the number here. And I have a little more on my handicap to this total as well a little later on.
I absolutely love that. Tease by Danny Brasco. I'm going to lean to the under. It's not, so these are all leans, right? Until we get to the official plays, which will be in just a second. But I lean to the under only because I think the Eagles, if they're going to win this game or stay close, I think they do have to have long sustained drives. And I think that starts with Jalen Hurts and this running game, maybe the short area passes to minimize Micah Parsons in that pass rush. So I could see a couple of drives here from the Eagles side in particular that might go 6, 7, 8 minutes. And that would be just enough to hit the under there. Now, where can you place these bets and where can you place the bets of our official picks, which are coming up next? You see it right here. BetMGM. That's Willie Beeman, a.k.a. Jamie Foxx. BetMGM has all the action for every sports fan. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get a first bet offer of up to $1,500. If your first bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets with bonus code EDGE1500. Again, that's bonus code EDGE1500. All right. We are finally to our official picks, and we're all going to give out official picks. And I'll check the chat to see if you all have any questions about maybe some totals that we're not on with respect to the prop market in particular. But I'm going right back to the well. Devontae Smith over 55.5 receiving yards. I put this on SportsLine a few hours ago. This really opened in most markets at around 57.5. It's steadied at 57.5 in some markets, but down to 55.5 in a lot of markets too. And the reason is, and by the way, it's only minus 106. So people are on the under here, even at this number. Dallas Goedert is back. And I get that. When Dallas Goedert is in the game, the target share absolutely decreases with respect to Devontae Smith specifically. But he's been on such a run lately, and I just don't think you can ignore him, even with Dallas Goedert back. We have a 52.5 point total, 53 in some places. And I just think at some point, you're going to have to see Devontae Smith beat these defensive backs who really take a lot of risks. We saw that with Deron Bland last week against DK Metcalf. Now, granted, he'll be on Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. But the point is, these guys take risks, and I think they're going to lose on some of these risks. I like Devontae Smith to go over yet again at a lesser number here, 55.5 receiving yards. Even with Dallas Goedert back, I really think this should still be in this type of atmosphere. I think this should be 63.5. It's not, so I'm going to take the over. And by the way, we've been cashing that ticket the last 3-4 weeks in a row. Kenzie, I'm going to go to you next. You and I had a conversation before we went live, and you said to me, and it was I'm so grateful for it because you were like, I was looking at Devontae Smith. I was thinking about taking his over, but see, I didn't want to steal your pick, and you would have stolen my pick. So I am grateful for that. But you've got 2 picks on 2 different running backs. I'd like to hear them.
Yeah, and we'll start with Philly here, and we're going to DeAndre Swift over 52.5 rushing yards. I know a lot of this game could be played in the air. I still think there's certainly room for this pick. Look, this city is so angry about the way last week went with the lack of run game from this team. It would have been different if they won with the lack of run game, but it was a terrible loss and they weren't running the ball. This team is angry, and I know that logic doesn't work with every team. Not everyone's listening to their fans, but Sirianni is listening to Philly. In fact, they were outside of the NovaCare facility with signs that said run the ball, so I know he heard them. But when it comes to Micah Parsons, this team has had success when they physically run right at him, neutralizing his lateral speed, forcing him to make decisions here. That is when they find success. So when he has time to look for you and outrun you, that is when things go bad for the Eagles. But they find a lot of success when they just go right at him and force him to make decisions when he's bursting through like that.
Absolutely. All right. So we've got DeAndre Swift over 52.5 rushing yards. Did you already cover the Rico Dowdle prop?
No, let's go. We're going to the other side of the ball here. Rico Dowdle over 14.5 rushing yards. Look, we're not asking him to do anything he hasn't done before. He's gone over this in 3 of his last 4 games. The one game he didn't hit it is he was busy racking up receiving yards. He had 11 rushing yards. So I think he's certainly going to be a part of this game plan. Our SportsLine simulation projects the Cowboys to have 100 yards on the ground. He usually makes up for at least 18% of their run game. And recently it's been closer to upwards of over 20%. So either way you want to look at this, it should be plenty of time for him to go over this prop.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Rico Dowdle. I bet his rushing prop, it was a while ago, maybe 5, 6 weeks ago. I've kind of left it alone since then. But really, this is a depressed number on him because, because that line for the Philadelphia Eagles, it's certainly formidable, that defensive line. But certainly like this pick. I think Rico, I mean, when you look at explosion, just coming off the handoff, he looks like Tony Pollard looked last year compared to Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm not trying to listen, Tony Pollard might have a good game. I'm not saying anything about him, but Rico Dowdle really does everything he can with the ball. And I think this is a pretty smart play. All right, Mike McClure, I see an ever so slight frown, which leads me to believe that perhaps whatever play we were looking at probably got called back and maybe Kansas City ended up losing this game. So how about we turn our fortunes around a little bit and you give us an SGP. Now, this isn't the donkey, which, by the way, stay tuned because you're going to get a donkey later. Mike, what's your play?
So good news, bad news. The SGP that is on here is no longer playable. Since I played it this afternoon, I did share it over on Twitter as well. It has moved. Numbers are no longer available. You can play a very similar number, though. So what I played was the Eagles plus 9.5 and the over 41.5. That was available at minus 120 on BetMGM for about 2 hours this afternoon. The reason why that was significant is because that is definitely not a normal 6-point tease. As you can tell by the total, and normally you would have been at least 45.5 up to 46. This bet, you move it to 8.5, which is the more key number than 9.5, and 42.5, which is still under the key number of 43 that we are trying to avoid. Still available minus 120 over on MGM. A reason why that is significant at other sportsbook, it is minus 164 and minus 181 right now. Very friendly price points over at BetMGM on these specifically here. So I would play it there. I would not play it elsewhere. But if 8.5 and 42.5 is nearly identical to 9.5 and 41.5. Again, 43 being the key number. Do not play it at 43. But yes, that would be the play. As far as why I was frowning, I was looking for MVP odds, Sia. So some recommendation on this game. I know we already talked sides. If you like the Eagles to win this game outright and you have access to it, I would simply bet Jalen Hurts plus 350 to win the MVP award. If they win this game, it is extremely unlikely that he doesn't have a good game. If he has a good game here, he eliminates Dak from the MVP race. Comes down to between him and Brock Purdy. Considering the way they give these awards and the way it's gone for Jalen so far, I think that it becomes an overall body of work award for him. Again, if he's able to win this tonight, he's going to get credit for a lot of what he was able to do last season as well. So if he's able to win tonight, that plus 350 will be very, very close to the money line that's there for the game right now and likely below it.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. The winner of this game is going to be up against Brock Purdy the last 4 or 5 games of the season for the MVP award for sure. And like you said, very favorable prices at BetMGM. Very friendly prices, I think is what you said. And speaking of friendly, Danny, I'm going to go to you. Now, I don't think of you as friendly because, and it's not because you're not friendly. It's because you're always giving UFC picks and you're always kind of doing the shadow boxing. And quite frankly, I'm just a little bit afraid of you. With all of that said, now you're talking football, and I don't know if everybody out there knows that you talk a lot of football, but I've always known you talk a lot of football. And you've got 2 picks. You kind of alluded to them earlier. Let's talk about it. What are your plays in this Cowboys-Eagles game?
Let's do it, Sia. And I don't know if you should be afraid of me, my man. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm in your weight class, but appreciate the compliment anyway. Yeah, I alluded to thinking that this hook is bait, perhaps, an attractive dangling carrot to take the Eagles. And while I think that is the case, I'd rather bet the flat number of Cowboys -3. So make sure you shop around for that. I'm finding minus 120 for that number. I don't want to lose if they only win by that field goal. But I made the point about thinking that this line is sort of a gift for Eagles bettors, seemingly, right? Well, a team this dominant this late in the season, the trend shows that maybe these prices are in fact traps. Teams with a 70+% win percentage in December or later, 48-70-3 against the spread. Speaking to that point, also Hurts has pretty significant home and away splits against the spread. He's 17-7-1 against the spread at home. That moves to 10-14-1 against the spread on the road. So Cowboys at home, like we alluded to earlier, I mean, they're rolling since 2021, 16-7 against the spread. And when they're coming off an against the spread loss, which they did to the Seattle Seahawks last week in an insane game, 11-2 against the spread in that same time period since 2021. So just think the Cowboys are rolling right now. I feel like the Eagles, if they're banged up at all, if they get any one key injury like Lane Johnson or a key defensive piece that gets banged up again, that's going to be the difference that kind of tips over the house of cards. And the luck has caught up with the Philadelphia Eagles. They're not a 10-2 team, and I think they go 10-3 today.
All right. So you got the Cowboys -3, and it looks like we might have a play on the under in this game, Danny.
I am going to go towards the under, and I'm a little scared of that line climbing against me. It looks like the market's moving against me, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to play it. So proceed with caution. I'm not going to hammer my entire bankroll. But the handicap that I'm including in this is on the referee. Two of my favorite referees to bet unders with are Bill Vinovich and this gentleman, John Hussey, who's refereeing this game. And the reason, his crew leads the league in flags thrown. What does he love to feature? That false start and that offensive holding. Amazing play. Bring it back. John Hussey is the king of that. Over more than 300 game sample size, John Hussey has refereed to more than 59% of unders. And this season, 7-3-1 to the under. So look for John Hussey to grab that yellow flag and be flinging it all night and cause this game to go under 52.5.
Hey, Danny, it's super smart. Officials are important. If you're a SportsLine member, you get Maestro's article, Larry Hartstein's article regarding the officials. And honestly, his record as it relates to the picks with the officials in play, it's pretty pristine. So go and take a look at that article. Each week, I think he posts it. Proppy, maybe you can verify that for me. Either way, you've got a play here, and it's on an under. And I don't know that it correlates perfectly with Kenzie's play, but it certainly makes a lot of sense. And we've got a play from Dave Richard I'm going to mention right after you give your pick, because he's got a similar play too. So, Proppy, what's your play?
Yeah, I do think it pairs nicely with Mackenzie's props. But first and foremost, I just want to tout my colleague, Mike McClure. I just love how creative Mike is when it comes to attacking the sports books in a variety of ways. So kudos to Mikey. You're a superstar. You're a mensch. But yeah, we're gonna fade Tony Pollard tonight. I'm going under 58.5 rushing yards. Tony Pollard has been one of the least efficient starting running backs in the NFL this year. I know he's played a little bit better this year, but the reason I like Mackenzie's Rico Dowdle play is because, again, Sia, you mentioned this, he looks to be the more explosive running back in the backfield. This Eagles run defense started off very strong, but they've cratered recently, but I really think they get a big boost tonight. Fletcher Cox returning to the lineup, Zach Cunningham returning to the lineup. These are two key Eagles defenders who've been a big part of that early season rushing success. They're also adding former All-Pro Shaq Leonard as well, who'll be making his Eagles debut tonight there. This Eagles run defense is still very good. If we look at a lot of the advanced metrics, they're fourth in PFF run defense grade. They're second in ESPN's run stop win rate. And again, Tony Pollard, 35th in success rate, running back 35 in success rate, running back 38 in elusive rating. Just not seeing it from him at all. I think we're going to see Dowdle start to eat into, and we have in recent weeks, his rushing share a little bit. And again, I think the Eagles got embarrassed last week by San Francisco and Christian McCaffrey in that San Francisco running game. They are healthier than they were. I think they're going to make it a priority to shut the running game down. I love fading Tony Pollard tonight under 58.5 rushing yards.
All right. You know who else loves fading Tony Pollard is our colleague and Proppy, specifically your colleague on the prop show, Dave Richard, whose work is amazing. You got to, I'm sure everybody who's watching this watches the prop show on Friday. With that said, he's on Tony Pollard's under 86.5 rushing and receiving at -119. And before we get to the donkey parlays, everybody, yeah, I said it, the donkey parlays. Let's go over our picks real quick. I've got Devontae Smith over 55.5 receiving yards. Kenzie's got DeAndre Swift over 52.5 rushing yards. And Rico Dowdle over 14.5 rushing yards. Danny Brasco's on the Cowboys -3 at -120. And the Eagles-Cowboys under 52. I just mentioned Dave Richards' pick. It's the Tony Pollard combined under. Mike McClure's on Eagles +9.5 and the over 41.5 in the same game parlay. And Proppy, Tony Pollard under 58.5 rush yards. Proppy and Mikey, the one thing we haven't had in quite some time that I know everybody in the chat is craving is the donkey and the goose parlay. So Mike McClure, I'm going to start with you. I don't know if I have a favorite between the donkey and the goose. I just know I love them both. So Mikey, you've got a donkey parlay and we want to see it.
Awesome. All right. Are we getting the donkey on the screen? I don't know if we have that on the screen or not. Okay, perfect. I didn't want to stare at my phone the whole time. All right. 7 legs on the donkey. There is a boost for everyone over on BetMGM tonight as well. So that takes it from plus 800 to plus 1200. But it's featuring the same play that I have as a straight up play to start it. It's the Eagles plus 9.5 and the over 41.5 in the game. Then we're going to look to our colleague Prop Stars. I love his play on Pollard. We're going to move that number to 74.5, go under his rushing yards, fading a 75th yard. Then we're looking for 65 receiving yards or more from A.J. Brown, 79.5. So give me 80 yards or more for CeeDee Lamb. And then we're going to try and middle Jalen Hurts passing. We know he's going to have to throw the football in this game. But I'm thinking we're not getting 300 yards here. So we're going to go between 199.5 and 299.5. Put those all together with the boost plus 1,200.
Plus 1,200. Absolutely love that. I see Danny. Danny, what's your reaction there? You're just nodding your head here.
No, that's awesome. Like you never see like a 7-leg parlay and the last 2 legs are literally contrarian against it. Like he's literally middling his last leg. I love it. That's fantastic.
Let's see if it comes in properly. You've got, of course, your goose parlay, reintroducing it to the crew, to the crowd. What is the goose parlay tonight, Cowboys Eagles?
Yeah, we're fired up for it. If Snake could put it up on the screen, my cat Goose actually works on this parlay all day while we're in the lab together. So this is his contribution to the stream. Shout out Goose. He's right next to me. And he doesn't consult with Mikey on the donkey. So this is all just organic overlap here. But we're starting with a Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. We know about the tush push. You know he's going to get in the end zone at least once tonight. Then we're going to go Tony Pollard, under 74.5 rushing yards. You guys know I love this spot. We're going to obviously take an inflated line here, fade that. And then we're going to go A.J. Brown, over 64.5 receiving yards. I think A.J. Brown is in line for a big game. More on that later when we get to the next section of this stream. And then last but not least, we're going to fade Jake Ferguson, under 69.5 receiving yards. Put all 4 of these together, and we get plus 380 odds.
Proppy, I'm going to kick it back to you real quick because I know you reduced the A.J. Brown receiving total to into that mid-60s, but generally where I'm seeing it is in the high 70s, around 78.5. I just wanted to ask you, and Kenzie, I'm going to come to you next on CeeDee Lamb because we haven't talked much about him. Proppy, are you feeling that over there? Do you think it's too efficient of a line to even consider one way or the other?
No, I'm definitely feeling the over on A.J. Brown with the Eagles. We know they have one of the more concentrated, condensed target distributions in the NFL. It's A.J. Brown, it's Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and then maybe a couple of extra targets go to the running backs or a tertiary wide receiver like Quez Watkins or Julio Jones or whoever's assuming that role on the field. But yeah, I just think A.J. Brown's playing at an absolutely elite level. We've seen closer to his floor over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and it's still requires a massive target share in the offense, a huge share of the air yards. And yeah, his ceiling is absolutely massive against this Dallas pass defense. It's obviously very good, a great pass rush too. But he is more than capable of getting off against this defense that does take a lot of risks. I expect a potential spike game for A.J. Brown tonight.
Absolutely. And Kenzie, I did want to ask you about CeeDee Lamb because he hasn't really entered the conversation. His line, I believe, at most books were hovering around like 92.5. It's pretty high. That's like prime Justin Jefferson territory. And I just wonder, in your opinion, have we reached a point where it's too high and you just have to stay away? Or do you have an opinion maybe on smashing the under or hitting the over on this one?
Yeah, no, I was looking at this earlier today. Our model that we have puts him at 91 yards, so not a ton of value there. But I could see this being a shootout type of game. Like Mike said, indoor facility. There's going to be a lot of passing here. The Cowboys have been speeding up their offense. So personally, not a play I'm necessarily on. I think Jake Ferguson, he was a player that had a great game against Philly a couple weeks ago. So maybe he's someone to look out for. But CeeDee Lamb, that number is just a bit too high for me right now.
All right. And Danny, let me kick it to you real quick. I just want a kind of a yes or no on Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts. Their yardage totals, passing yardage totals. Dak's is really high. It's 300.5. You got Jalen Hurts at 255.5. Any opinion either way? And if anybody else has anything they want to say on that specific question, whether it's on Jalen or Dak Prescott's passing yards, let me know. But Danny, any opinion either way on an over or under on either of those quarterbacks?
I can't play a number above 300. MC, I told you on a previous episode of Early Edge that I'm done playing unders on QB passing props, just too much variance and negative game scripts. So for that reason, I'd stay away from this. But yeah, the numbers are certainly inflated. If you like those, maybe look at the receiving prop counterparts.
All right. Does anybody, before we get to, I think what a lot of people think is their favorite part of the show, certainly mine, the gem, the first touchdown score, anybody have any sort of notes on any players that we didn't cover? If so, let me know. Anyone?
I'd say speaking of Dak Prescott passing yards, I'd say I'd lean this under here at 301.5 if you can get it. He usually kills Philly in the air, and Philly's pass D has looked really bad. So it's almost like two such obvious trends that you just want to bet against that. You have to see some regression to the mean here. So if I were to play either of these props for either of the quarterbacks, I think my favorite would be Dak under 300 yards here.
It does seem really high. I got to admit, it seems very, very high. You know what else seems high is my gem total. So let's transition finally to the first touchdown score in this game. As you know how it works, it's got to be somebody who's plus 1,000 or more. And let's see who gets to start. Oh, that would be me. Okay, it would be Devontae Smith. Listen, I'm just going to ride the Devontae Smith train until the wheels fall off. I think obviously he's good for a deep shot in this game. Hopefully it's early. These Dallas corners can absolutely get beat, and it's going to be A.J. Brown. I suppose it could be Dallas Goedert through the middle of the field, but I'm going to go with Devontae Smith at plus 1,400, really to electrify the Eagles and quiet the crowd. Like the number at plus 1,400. I think you can get this done. All right, Proppy, you're up next, and you're kind of taking, I guess, Devontae Smith's counterpart.
I am indeed, Sia. Yeah, I think that analysis you just provided is applicable to A.J. Brown. Just absolutely elite target profile in this high volume passing offense of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's been absolutely phenomenal all season long. I expect him to continue to be the engine of this Eagles offense. Give me A.J. Brown, who frankly, in my opinion, should not be at 11-1 odds. So we love the value here. And I do have to mention right now that when this show started pre-stream, our wonderful producer, Snake, Jake, had my gems off. So we got our gems back. All is right in the universe. And Jake, you might as well put that third one up because we're going to add that tonight.
Wow. A lot of confidence. And Kenzie, speaking of confidence, your first show, which was just a couple of weeks ago, you figuratively sort of pointed to the wall like Babe Ruth, and you called your shot and you said that's where I'm going to hit it and it's going to go over the fence. And that's exactly what you did. And I got to be honest, I love this. I love this play. So talk to us about your first touchdown score.
Yeah, as much as I'm an Eagles fan, I never claimed them to be a first half team. So I do think this could be a Dallas first touchdown here. Look, Cooks has been heating up. He's been heating up in the end zone the past 2 weeks. I think a lot of the public and people are on Jake Ferguson and then CeeDee Lamb for obvious reasons. I think Brandon Cooks could be a little overlooked in this, embarrassment of riches of targets for the Cowboys here. So I think he could be overlooked tonight. And, you just got to go with the gut feeling a little bit too. So that's where I'm at.
I totally agree about the gut feeling. And before I kick it to you, Mike, I do want to see Mike and Danny, you're back on the primetime show. And I want you to know right off the bat, because I respect what both of you have done so much, taking a couple of long shots. I'm just saying I'm normally not going, lower than like plus 1,500. I'm normally in the 18 to plus 3,000 range, but I got to dip down into the chalky ranges from time to time. So that's just my plea to you, because I respect what you guys are doing with the long shots here. Mike, who's your first touchdown score?
Kenneth Gainwell. This will be interesting to see some of the usage, particularly in opponent territory with Dallas Goedert back in the mix. But Gainwell typically gets a lot of his usage anytime, I'll call it not the red zone, but anytime they're in like the 35 to 40 yard line and in, that's where we see a lot of usage from Kenneth Gainwell, particularly in the first quarter of games. So I like his ability in the pass catching game. I think having Dallas Goedert out there is only going to help. So I like the price point here. You can actually find it at plus 3,500. I personally think that it's more of a time split between him and Swift early, particularly in this matchup. So I personally think this number should be down to 2,700.
Well, Danny Brasco, Mike McClure goes long, and you say to Mike McClure, hold my gem. You went even longer than Kenneth Gainwell. Explain your answer, sir.
Yeah, when we're taking first touchdown shots, we got to you got to swing for the fences here. And Kavonte Turpin, shout out BetMGM for being one of the only sports books that's actually listing his over/under receiving yards, because he's hit it in every single game he's played in this season. It's all the way up to 8.5 from 4.5, but that's just another side angle you want there. Other books not even listing it. So I like him because he's a playmaker. He's someone that just gets involved every so often when Dallas needs a little spark. He scored 3 times this season, and while he's not a name that you're going to be hearing like Brandon Cooks or CeeDee Lamb or the other guys, he's just as capable athletically. They use him in trick sets. So I could see him getting involved. How often are you watching a primetime game and a guy that you've never heard of scores for the first touchdown for plus $1 million, right? Let that be us. Let that be Kavonte Turpin.
I love it. I love Kavonte Turpin. I think he's an interesting play in DFS. If you're playing showdown lineups, I'm pretty sure he's relatively cheap, kind of a punt option you can throw into your lineups. If everybody doesn't know, we all do DFS, I think, but me and Mike McClure do the Fantasy Football Today DFS show. So hopefully, Mike, you had a good day. I'll see you on Friday for that 11 o'clock show. But let's talk about our best bets real quick. Let's throw them up one more time. And while we're looking at those, I don't know that we're going to read them off, but I'd like to ask each of you what you're looking forward to in this game. I mean, I think it's such a prime time spot for both of these teams. I mean, we're talking about not just how big it is in the NFC race, but we're talking about MVPs and things of that nature. So, Danny, I'm going to start with you. What's the one thing you're looking forward to most in this primetime matchup?
I want to see if both of these teams can prove it. I'm calling the Eagles frauds. I'm saying they're a 10-2 team that's more like 7-5. Prove it. Beat the Dallas Cowboys. And right here, everyone's talking about the Cowboys' cakewalk of a schedule they've had, right? They've only beaten up on bad teams. Prove it. Beat the team in front of you in the division here. One note, Sia, someone mentioned John Hussey, my referee. He's actually 7-0 for the Philadelphia Eagles when reffing Eagles games. And that plays into my conspiracy theory that the news is out there. Hussey knows that he's under the gun for perceived bias. He's calling for the Cowboys tonight. That's just another side note, though.
I love the levels of psychology you are digging deep into. That's pretty impressive. Proppy, Danny just kind of called out your team here a little bit. What's the one thing you're looking forward to tonight on primetime football?
I just feel like I'm reeling. I'm like concussed from all that. Just the hateful talk from Danny here. A 7-5 team. Excuse me, Danny. We just beat Kansas City in Kansas City and Buffalo. I mean, goodness gracious, we moved to San Francisco and suddenly we're a 7-5 team. What is up, my dude? Danny, if you're game, I would be more than happy to do a late showdown with you, my friend. The offer is up for you. The offer is yours, Danny, if you want to dance.
Wow.
Hey, man, if you watch those Chiefs and Bills games, you know that you guys did not deserve to win them. So those are wins that should be losses. And for that reason, I accept.
Wow. Well, you know what you have to say, right, Danny? To get Jake to throw it up there.
I guess it's been a minute since I've been showdown. The only Buckets challenges me ever. Jake, Snake, hit the music.
It's gonna be a showdown.
Wow, that's 2 late show showdowns. Proppy, you won yours against the Maestro during our NFL kickoff show, did you not?
I did indeed, Sia, and we're going to make it a clean sweep tonight, aren't we, Danny?
No, just to be clear, I'm going -3. I don't want that hook. I don't want any part of that hook.
That's fair. Right, Proppy?
I'll give you 3.
All
Oh,
right.
man.
Very, very fair. Kenzie, what's the one thing you're looking forward to the most, Eagles-Cowboys?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but Jalen Hurts, he really hasn't been in a situation like this in a really, really long time. To be crushed by a team like that and have to go back on the road again. So this will be really interesting to see how he responds to this. Again, the Eagles are almost done with this terrible gauntlet. I'm pleasantly surprised with how it's gone so far. I think it will be so big if they can get this win here tonight.
All right. Well, Mike, I know you're looking forward to hitting a plus 1,200 donkey parlay, but what else are you looking forward to on primetime football tonight?
Yeah, definitely hitting the donkey and just rooting with everybody. It's good to be back on the show with everyone here. I would say the thing I'm looking most forward to is just to see the way Jalen Hurts and the Eagles bounce back or respond from that loss, and then just can Dallas keep it up at home. So it should be a fascinating game. It's got some pretty big implications across the board as well. I think that aspect of it is very underrated. But the biggest thing I would say, if you like the Eagles, strongly consider the Jalen Hurts MVP, because I think this game decides who wins the MVP award. And I do think, again, awards like that become a body of work when there's such a premium at the top. So I think Jalen Hurts, should he win this game, will be rewarded nicely for what he was able to do last season.
San Francisco 49er fans are sending their hate tweets to Mike McClure right now because they think it's going to be Brock Purdy. But it's certainly a good point. It's between whoever wins tonight and Brock Purdy. I will say this about San Francisco. Their schedule relatively easy the rest of the way other than playing the Baltimore Ravens. I think that game is in San Francisco. So this MVP race is going to be absolutely fantastic. I'll tell you the thing I'm looking forward to the most. Every time I see the Cowboys in a big spot, whether it's early in the playoffs, I say early because they're always bounced early, or late in the season where they really have to play somebody who's really good on the interior, offensive line, defensive line, they tend to get pushed around. So the question becomes, can Dallas get pushed around defensively by the Eagles run game, by Jalen Hurts, by the offensive skill players on the outside? And frankly, can Dak Prescott flash that arm like he has, again, against lesser teams? Can he do it against the Philadelphia Eagles? Bad on the back end, pretty good on the front end in terms of their front four. So I'm so intrigued by this matchup. It has so many NFC and frankly Super Bowl implications. Forget about Brock Purdy. San Francisco 49ers, they want home field advantage, and they, I assume, are rooting very, very hard for the Dallas Cowboys. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into Early Edge Primetime. We'll see you again tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning for the Early Edge, for Kenzie, for Mike McClure, for Proppy, and for Danny Brasco. Oh, and for Jake on the 1s and 2s and 9s and 10s. I am the counselor, and we rest our case.